Take a look at this quote. We've just got to make sure we don't get too far away from taking threes and layups and foul shots. It'll be a little bit of a learning process. But then again, if everybody is committed, then you have no doubt it can work. I used to tell people all the time Carmelo Anthony was the best scorer in the league because he could score at three levels. Score at three, not great, but he could score at three. He's a great mid-range player and a tremendous post player. They don't post up in Houston. They don't want anybody in the post in Houston. Matter of fact, read his quote, and none of it is, hey, we can't wait to throw it in the post and play through the post. It's just not how they play. The weakest part of his game is shooting threes or driving and getting to playing downhill to get to the free throw line. You're trying to make him into what a better version offensively and a weaker version of what Trevor Ariza is. Compound that with the fact that you're depending on James Harden, who TMZ has a story that he took a woman's cell phone and, tried to throw it away because there was some sort of kerfuffle, if you will, or a scuffle between somebody in the crew he was rolling with and somebody else at a club. Look, James Harden's a lot of things. Again, great offensive player, has to have the basketball, doesn't care much about defense, fakes it a little bit, and then funnels you to Clint Capella. It kind of works when you have four guys defensively and James Harden. It kind of works. But Harden's still a go-out and hang-out guy. He's a league MVP making nearly $50 million under contract per year, and he's still a go-out, hang-out club guy at 29 years old. That's the kind of stuff you do when you're 23 years old. Carmelo Anthony, as much as he says, I want to fit in and I want to make this work and it's all smiles and he wants to win a championship, he wanted to make the triangle work. It didn't. He wanted to make it work with Mike D'Antoni last time. It didn't. The only time Carmelo Anthony has seen great success in the NBA by his own accounts would be when he was playing for Mike Woodson and they went ISO Joe. Give me the ball and let everybody else play off of me. If you think a lead singer can become a backup singer, you look around the music industry and you just don't see very many of them. Even in what I do, you're a solo host and all of a sudden you're going to be a producer or you're going to just be a role player. It's really, really hard adjustment. And when for 15 years you've played the exact same way every year and somebody's asking you to play a different way, it becomes challenging. And then there's the ego part to it. Look, if I'm advising Carmelo Anthony, I tell him, hey, you're going to go against inferior players as a sixth man. Those guys aren't as good as you. You can elongate your career. Unlike Allen Iverson, who refused to come off the bench and understand what Jamal Crawford figured out a long time ago. I'm really a starter. I'm playing as a bench player, and all I have to do is come in and generate offense, and I don't have to do all those little things. I don't have to play the role of a two-way player nearly as much. But the downside to that is there's going to be a lot of games, especially the important ones, when you got to sit there with a towel in your hand and wave that sucker for P.J. Tucker, who hasn't had nearly the career you have had, but fits better into what they want to do and how they want to do it to win a championship in Houston. And then you go down to the fact that he and D'Antoni end up having a beef that led to a divorce last time around. And, oh, yeah, by the way, you got James Harden, a go-out, hang-out guy at 29 years old as a league MVP who doesn't care about defense. You got Clint Capella. Will he play like the guy who's trying to earn the contract that he got or live up to the contract that he already received? You don't have Trevor Ariza to be the Swiss Army knife. And you have Chris Paul, who plays the way I dreamed I could play in the NBA, but he's never healthy at the most important time. And it's going to be a year later, which means he's more likely to get hurt yet again. Look, in a dream scenario, on paper, in a vacuum, could it work? Hell yeah, it could work. And it could be really, really fun. I want to talk for a second about relevance and people's fear of losing relevance. Like kids have FOMO, fear of missing out, right? It's actually, this is kind of parenting, and I know Joy, thankfully, you don't have to kind of go through this, but raising two 12-year-old girls, it's really, really hard from this, and these are first world problems. But they went to middle school last year, and middle school, my wife says everybody has a cell phone, and I was like, well, why do ours have to have a cell phone? Like they have an iPad. If they're near Wi-Fi and they need something, they can text us from their iPad. No, you don't understand. everybody has a cell phone. They no longer track who gets picked up, who gets dropped off. They need to be able to communicate with one another, which is great, especially in not knowing what the assignment is on any given day, right? You're on the group text with your friends, and you text them, what's the homework? And all of a sudden, you end up having a group study session without ever having to join a group study session. Instagram can be awesome, right? Instagram in many ways has jumped past Twitter, has jumped past Facebook as the way to communicate and the way to stay in touch with friends that are lost. And for my kids, moving from East Coast back to West, it was an awesome way to stay in touch and in tune with everything that was going on there, as well as meeting new people here. The problem is that you give them this device and they move across the country, they look down at their Instagram and they see all their old friends still hanging out together. They're the only ones missing, right? It's like Back to the Future. Remember when the kids would start to disappear from the photos? That's what they look like. They disappear from the photos. And then their new friends, who they are new friends, but already have established relationships, they follow them. They see that they're not invited to some of the get-togethers. They're sitting at home, and instead of, like we were as kids, not knowing what else was going on in the world, they understand life moves on in their old place, and life has already progressed in their new place. They're at home, and they have this fear of missing out. I think adults, a lot of us, especially in the media, we have this fear of losing relevance. I can remember when I left the first place I worked for, I was there for 10 years total, 9 years on campus, as they said. And you always felt, some of it is kind of how the place functions, but you always felt like you were relevant. You said something there, it resonated. People knew. Then I left, and I went to a new place. We started a new radio division. We were on a cable channel that was, tertiary at best in comparison to the other sports TV channels. And so you would say interesting things. For example, I'll give you one. Skip was on at ESPN, and he said that Johnny Manziel had a drinking problem based upon the people that he knew. He had a substance abuse problem. I had said the exact same thing 2 weeks before, having really good sources, knowing exactly who Johnny Manziel was. Nobody picked it up. Do you know why? Because the place I wasn't relevant. It didn't get out there. We didn't have a social media team. I was the social media team, And so I understand that you want to stay relevant. You want to stay in the conversation. You want to be one of the guys or one of the ladies that people are talking about what they're talking about. So I think that what LaVar Ball said on an LA radio station is just that. Some of it's LaVar being LaVar. But the level of ridiculousness to this statement reeks to me of a guy who understands he's no longer relevant, no longer part of the conversation. He was out of the country half the year. He started his JBA, which, by the way, had an entire season. And though they just had a championship game, his boys, the LA team, won the championship game, and it was pretty well attended. The fact is that it didn't get any sort of national media coverage. He's losing his relevance because his son didn't perform at the level they thought. His other son can't get a sniff in the NBA. His third son is only kind of welcome to play in his league. And I think this is a cry for relevance.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.